Welcome back to the Empire Builders podcast. Dave Young here alongside Stephen Semple. And Stephen, you told me the topic today, and I know, of course I know about it.
Of
I
course
might
you
even be
do.
able to guess the guy's first name, and that I know that he was Eastern European, but probably Russian. Erno Rubik, the inventor of is it Erno?
It is. Well
Okay.
done. Bing, bing, bing. Gold star
Bing,
for
bing,
Dave.
Erno Rubik. So we're going to talk about Rubik's Cube, and
Correct.
Erno is the Rubik in question. It was the big toy when I was a kid. I'm thinking 80s, early 80s, late 70s. When
Yeah.
is that kind of? So
Yep.
my frustration with it is I've never been able to do it. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube to save my life.
I'm
And
with you.
I know people that can just are the ones that can go click, 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 and done.
I
I'm like,
hate them.
dang. All right. I say with a passion. With a passion.
I hate them. Yeah. Well, and when you say going on to be big, it went on to become the best-selling toy of all time.
Yeah.
So big, yes. The biggest, in fact. The biggest,
Yeah.
in fact. So the idea started in the 1970s. And if we go back to the 1970s, games were primarily puzzles, and puzzles were kind of getting boring. And video games had just come out and were
Mhm.
proving to be super popular and were
Yeah.
impacting other games. Like other games and toys all started to incorporate lights and sounds and electronics. Like you remember Battleship? Battleship suddenly had sound effects, like where instead of you just saying you sank my battleship, you press a little sound and there'd be a little explosion
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
all that other stuff. So toys were all starting to incorporate this stuff. And Milton Bradley even predicted at the time that every toy in the future would be electronic. That was
Mm.
the mindset at that moment. Then along comes Rubik's Cube with no electronics, no sound effects, sells 3 million units in 3 years and goes on to become the best-selling toy of all time.
Yeah.
So it's 1974. Erno Rubik is the professor at the Hungary College of Applied Arts, right? Which at that time is part of the Soviet Union. So it's behind the
Yeah.
wall.
It's part of the whole deal. Yeah.
And he's a trained architect and he's teaching architecture and design. His father's an engineer, his mother's a poet, and he's really interested with how people interact with things. And he would teach a class on how to do 3D drawings. And he would start with a cube.
Mm.
And when drawing, you can only see 3 sides at a time. So this started out not as a toy, but as a teaching device.
Okay.
He wanted to get across the idea of thinking in 3 dimensions. How can you rotate things around a core? How does this impact the relationship to each one of the sides? So he creates this cube where you can rotate the sides,
Amazing. Okay.
but he still needs to track the movement to show the special relationships. So he puts stickers on the faces. But as he
Mm.
starts to turn it, he realizes, how do I get things to line up again? So when he tries to move it to solve it, he makes it worse. We've experienced that, right, Dave?
Oh God. Yeah.
Suddenly, it's not a teaching tool, it's a puzzle.
Yeah. How do I get it back to the start? I know it can be done because I undid it.
Right. There's no easy
Yeah.
solution. It's like the couch that came into the room. It got in here, so I know I can get it out.
Yeah.
And at the time, he has no idea how complex this is. And he's fiddling with it. A month later, he's still not solved it. And he feels like he should be able to solve this.
Right? Yeah. I'm glad to hear that he couldn't do it either.
Solving the cube requires 3D awareness. And he suddenly solves it and he feels the thrill.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. And we've covered this in other podcasts such as Tetris. He's in a communist country, Hungary, and no one can create anything. The government does. Everything is owned by the government. All ideas are owned by the government. So how do you monetize the idea? He's the son of an aviation engineer, and his dad does own some patents. So it is possible in Hungary, but it takes quite a while to get a patent. And he eventually does, and he names it Magic Cube and releases it in Hungary. And it slowly
Mm.
gets a bit of a fan base, but he can't get it beyond the Iron Curtain. Now, Hungary is closer to the West than the rest of the communist Russia, and he's able to send the cube to a West German toy fair. And remember, it's called Magic Cube. And only one
Mhm.
toy company is interested. The ideal toy company needs a hit. Like they haven't had a hit in a while. So they send Stuart Sims to Hungary to investigate
Okay.
this idea. Stuart looks at this, right? So basically, he's handed one of these cubes. He looks at it, he fiddles with it, and he doesn't believe it's able to be solved. So he hands it back to Rubik and he says, "Can you
Can't
solve
be
it?"
done.
Can't be done, can't be solved. So imagine the pressure in that moment.
Mm,
Rubik manages to solve it, and they all feel the thrill,
nice.
right? Because that's the key to a game, the thrill, right? The next thing Stuart says is he hates the name Magic Cube. He wants to call it Rubik's Cube. Rubik agrees to change the name. It becomes Rubik's Cube. 3 years later, 100 million sold, and becomes the best selling toy of all time. But it
Yeah.
started off as a teaching aid.
I love that. I love that it started off as you can see it being used, right?
Hmm.
You divide a cube into, thirds in 3 different dimensions and then rotate one.
Right.
And what a great tool for teaching three-dimensional thinking.
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Okay, fine.
That doesn't sound okay.
Well,
What is it?
my business.
What about it?
You probably wouldn't understand.
Hit me.
Well, you know I love it.
But.
My revenues have flatlined and I'm not growing anymore.
Okay.
Well, it's frustrating and depressing, and it was so much better when we were growing.
Oh, I bet it was.
And nothing I've tried has moved the needle.
What about talking to Steven?
Steven who?
You know, the guy that hosts this podcast.
Really? You think he could help?
I hear he runs a paid for performance marketing agency.
I wonder how that works.
Why don't you ask him?
How?
Book one of those free starter sessions on the podcast website.
I don't know.
You can't say you've tried everything if you don't try this.
You're right. I might even learn something.
I bet you do.
Thanks, man. Let's go grab a bite.
Yeah, sounds good. Right after you call Steven.
Okay.
Book your starter session on this podcast's website. Just visit theempirebuilderspodcast.com and click on Get Started.
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
And I have to give Rubik a lot of credit here. He created this as a teaching thing, but he saw its potential as a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not discount that. There are so many things where people, because their mind isn't open for it and it could work so much better somewhere else, don't do it. Like, this is what amazed me when we did way back one of the early episodes on DoorDash, where they had originally sought, they were creating software for the restaurant business that was solving a different problem. And when they went in to talk to the restaurateurs are going, "That's not a problem, but can you solve this problem?" And they went, "Oh, we could use this to solve this problem." And suddenly that they were in a different business. Or, MM LaFleur, right? Where she really was a pioneer in the whole idea of shipping dresses to people. It's like, it would be easy to sit there and go, "Oh, well, yeah, it'd be obvious it's a toy." Not. I got
Yeah.
really keeping your mind open to these opportunities is a huge thing. So he didn't set out to build a toy, he set out to build a teaching device that ended up becoming an awesome toy.
You could develop it as a drawing of cubes, right, and try to explain that. That's probably how he started, right? But
It
to
is how
build
he
it
started, yes.
in actual physical space so you can actually manipulate it. I can say I've never solved one, but they are fun to just handle and manipulate.
Yes.
Right? It's a nice toy to have in your hands and just fiddle with.
Yes.
And I mean, there's a huge market for fidget toys, right? We've seen
Mhm.
fidget spinners, and we've seen, like, you could almost make the case that the Rubik's Cube was probably used as a fidget toy as much, if not more so, than as a fun puzzle to solve.
Yes.
Right? Everybody had one and everybody played with it, but there weren't that many people that could just whip it back into its solved position. As we speak, I'm the kind of person that if I don't have stuff in my hands that I'm kind of playing with when we're doing recordings like this, there's a real chance that I'm going to click off to another tab and just be on Facebook or somewhere, and you'll be telling me some really interesting facet of the story. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, Dave, back
'Cause-
here.
And so when you told me the topic, I even showed you, like, I have this little fidget toy that's nothing but aluminum cubes that are hinged together in weird ways, and you can just fold it and unfold it and fold it and unfold it. Every single side of the cube is blue.
Right.
Right. There's no unsolved position on this. Like, it's a
Right.
Rubik's Cube. In fact, it made me think that's the Rubik's Cube that I want, is where all 6 sides are the same color.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
look like a genius. Right.
Yeah, there's this magic of fiddling with it. And it's funny you talk about fidget toys and whatnot. My oldest daughter, Crystal, she's gone back to the world's oldest fidget toy, which is knitting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? And she describes it as a quiet fidget toy. It's one that you
Uh-huh.
can do and it's nice and quiet.
Yeah.
But the world's oldest fidget toy, knit or crochet.
Yeah.
One of those two, right?
Dude, yeah. I mean, I'm the guy that'll sit in a meeting and take a pen apart.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
I guilty.
Yeah.
But it's very cool when you think like he was trying to solve this problem and also recognizing that it's one thing to show it and it's one thing to draw it and it's another thing to manipulate it. And what I can imagine is that moment where he goes, okay, I'm going to put colors on the sides and I'm going to twist it and I'm going to twist it. Okay, now I'm going to twist it back. And it's like,
And I can't.
oh crap, I can't. It's spending
And-
like literally a month. And he's an expert at thinking a 3D litter spending a month going, it has to be possible.
Yeah. It has to be, right? That's if you really want to screw with somebody, if you figure out how to take a Rubik's Cube apart and put one of the cubes back in, like, just 90 degrees off. I'll give it a little, and my kids would take them apart. They're kind of an interesting, even mechanical principle on how they work. But yeah, I love that it started off as just a teaching tool and accidentally became a puzzle, because I gotta get, like, I used to take apart a lot of things when I was a kid, right? My
Yeah.
dad would bring gear home and I'd take it apart, and I never had a thought about putting it back together again. It was all stuff that didn't work anyway. So I learned how to disassemble electronics, but never put any together. I like this story, and man, that's success, right? Biggest seller of all time.
Yeah, and the other pressure moment is when he's handed the thing by Stuart and says, okay, I don't think it's possible. You have to prove it. And all of a sudden it's like, I got to do it right now, quickly.
Yeah.
Or I got no
Pressure's on.
sale.
And then it's just called the random cube, and it's a fidget toy. Oh, look, I accidentally got it to be all 6 colors on the same sides. Or it took me right. There's this one magic day that is like, oh, look at that. What a fun story to pick apart.
Yeah,
Twist up
and twist around.
Twist it around, yeah.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review. And if you have any questions about this or any other podcast episode, email to questions@theempirebuilderspodcast.com.